Michael once more raises a petition to remove Terry's feeding tube, and the motion is passed. You can imagine, well actually you can see, if you look online you will see the protests, the outrage in the streets, but it happens, and for the second time in her life Terry's feeding tube is removed. Now what does Jeb Bush do in this situation? Well, he gets a legislator, and I'm sure we all know what that is, but if you don't, a legislator is, well, basically a lawmaker. And he gets this lawmaker to make something called Terry's Law. So this is how it works. Jeb calls the lawmaker in the dead of night, and a group of politicians gather, and they agree that this thing called Terry's Law should be passed, which will basically see Terry's feeding tube be put back in. Now, interestingly, this is the only law ever created in American history that can only be applied to one individual, Terri Schiavo. It's the most fucking bonkers, crazy law, and it states that a governor, so Jeb Bush in this case, can overrule what a judge says about feeding tubes. It basically says a governor has the right to say, "No, judge, you are wrong, I'm overruling you." And within the law, there's lots of specifics. Within Terry's Law, there's things like they must not have a written will. There must be family conflict. I mean, come on. They might as well have added, the person must be in such and such a hospital and be this age and be called Terri Schiavo. I mean, it's literally it's a law just about this case. If we just take a moment to try and understand that madness, I mean, Jeb Bush has created a law which basically says, "Excuse me, judges, I know better than all of you, and I'm going to overpower you." It is a scary fucking world where that can happen. So now, we've had the Pope involved. We've had new laws being made. But what of Terry? That's always the question. Well, what's happened is Michael has moved her into a hospice. He's had the feeding tube removed. And for her last few days, what he wants is he wants her to live out those last few days in a place that is calm and peaceful, where he knows that she will receive great care. And he's there, he's there every day, as are her family. But he wants her to be in somewhere where her final few days on earth can be the best that they can be. Like I said, it was calm. And it was peaceful. But not for long. Because Jeb Bush does the craziest thing. He orders Florida police to go to the facility and remove Terry and take her back from the hospice to a hospital and have her feeding tube put back in. Now, at the time this happens, Michael isn't there, and he can't stop it happening. The Schindlers, they are there, and of course they support this. I mean, essentially what's happening here is she's being kidnapped from the place where Michael has moved her to die. But Jeb Bush, well, he thinks he knows better. So in the middle of the night, an ambulance arrives with 30 police cars, and Terry's body is escorted back to the original hospital. And Jeb Bush, he comes out of this as the hero. Because of Terri's law that he has made happen, the feeding tube is put back in, and he's saved the day. This is now the second time that Michael has had the tube removed and it's been put back. Okay, so Terri's now back, living on the tube, and Michael is just lost in all of this. Interestingly, at the time, there is a little bit of a turn now in public opinion. There's lots of groups who are now in support of Michael, saying actually he should be allowed to do what he wants to do. There's lots of anti-Jeb Bush protesters who say politicians should never have gotten involved in this story. They're actually only hindering Terri's condition. They're not helping in any way. Michael comes out and he speaks to the press and he says, look, you're all attacking me on a daily basis. Please remember, this is my wife. This is the person I love most in the world. You can print your headlines, you can call me a murderer, but can any of you tell me what Terri wanted? Can any of you tell me the colour of Terri's eyes, or what her hopes and her fears were? What were her favourite things to do? No, you can't. I'm acting in her best interest because, as her husband, she told me she didn't want to be hooked up to machines for the rest of her life. Now, in the name of balance, her family will say, look, we're acting the way that we are because whoever wants to say goodbye to their child, no one. We want Terri around. Michael once more petitions for the feeding tube to be removed. And if we thought this story couldn't go up any more levels in the gears, then it is about to. The US Congress get involved. Congress is, of course, if you don't know, it's best way to describe it, it's the big daddy of lawmaking, and they decide they now need to be a part of the Terri Schiavo story. Well, why not? Come on, everyone's welcome. We've had fucking everybody at this point. Yeah, come on in. Everybody's got a say in this story. I'm surprised Oprah's not made an appearance at this point. She probably will in a minute. So, US Congress, they start having meetings and they decide that they want to support Jeb Bush and they want to stop Michael from being able to remove the feeding tube. They say things like, the men and the women who are trying to murder Terri Schiavo will one day pay for their crime. And what they mean here is they mean the judges who have ruled in Michael's favour. Another, oh my god, as if this case needs this again, another set of investigators are sent to look at Terri on the Schindler side, and the doctors say another, as if this case needs this again, another set of investigators are sent to look at Terri on the Schindler side, and they say she has a form of Down syndrome, and if you take the tube out, you are essentially killing a person with a disability. On Michael's side, a very well respected doctor says the Schindlers are kidding themselves. And it's dangerous to now say that she has Down syndrome. She is in a permanent vegetative state and she will never recover. And now we're just going in circles. But the problem is, it's now become this huge battle in politics of the Democrats versus the Republicans. All manner of politicians on both sides are making appearances on Terri's case. So Congress is made up of both Democrats and Republicans, and the decision is that they will make a new law, a new bill, which says that Michael Schiavo has no right to remove the tube. So, well, we know that they've already created a law about Terri Schiavo, but they want this one to be the law that actually takes away all of Michael's powers. And they need to get a certain amount of signatures from Congress to make this happen. And so the bill is put forward, and 423 politicians sign this piece of paper saying that, yes, this law should be passed. Michael should have no right to decide his wife's fate. People who signed that law include Barack Obama and George Bush. George Bush, there's this whole drama about the fact that he flies back from his Texas ranch in the middle of the night to sign the bill because it's so urgent and it has to be done because he was president at the time. So it was he comes back and he's signing this piece of paper which is no one should have the right to decide whether someone dies or lives. Yeah, anyway. Barack Obama will years later say that he regrets signing the bill and that now he understands Michael Schiavo's struggle. It's thorny, it's difficult. I know we all have our own political views, we all feel different, but yeah. So this is difficult now for Michael. His hands are essentially just being tied. He's being told you can no longer make any decisions. Now we've had this massive media involvement and we've had huge public interest in Terri's case, but the American public are now beginning to get a little bit pissed off with the whole thing. They're now feeling like Terri is being a little bit lost in the story. People are starting to feel like now politicians have got involved and they've kind of derailed it from what it actually is. There's lots of protesters now holding signs which say things like, Mrs. Bush, are you proud of your sons? They've got involved in something they don't understand. So, this new law arrives, supposedly taking away all of Michael's power. And the judge, remember the one I said earlier on who I just love because he's sassy and wanting to get a bullshit. He basically says, fuck you to this new law. This law that George Bush and Barack Obama have signed, he says, nah, no way. You don't get to just come in here and tell us how to rule. I mean, it's insane at this point. Congress now starts saying they're going to investigate each and every judge who's ever been involved in the Terri Schiavo case and have them dismissed. This has gone to another level of madness. It's just gone insane. But essentially, the judge in charge of it says, no. Michael Schiavo still has control here. He still has the power to decide what happens to his wife. Jeb Bush, now the face of the Save Terri Schiavo campaign, orders state police to go into the hospital and remove Terri. And this will be the second time that fucking Jed has done this. Come on, Jed, man. What you doing, mate? Have a fucking word with yourself. Come on. He orders police to go in and remove Terri and get her into a facility where she can have a feeding tube and the judge, the same brilliant fucking brilliant judge, steps in and goes, nah, Jeb, this needs to stop now. And actually Jeb Bush complies and he calls off the police. For the third time, Terri's tube is removed. Michael is granted permission for this, and this is where the story of Terri Schiavo will come to an end. When the tube is removed, Terri lives for 13 days. During that time, her family and Michael are at her bedside. There are camera crews, news reporters, thousands of people outside of the hospital. At this point, there are no more laws. There are no more petitions. And as hard as the Schindlers fight, this is the end for Terri. On the third day of the tube being removed, she's given the last rites by a priest. Michael and her family are at her bedside 24 hours a day. On the 13th day of no tube, Terri Schiavo dies. Her death is written as death by dehydration. When she dies, it's breaking news across the world. Classes in American schools are stopped for teachers to be able to tell students that Terri Schiavo is dead. There are silences held in churches, shopping centres, schools, workplaces all across the country. Nearly 500,000 people turn out to a park in Florida and light candles for Terri. Pictures are put up on lampposts, street signs, and the news that Terri Schiavo is dead is now the top headline around the world. In the days after she dies, obviously every politician is out saying their piece about it and getting media attention. But what of Mary and Robert and Michael Schiavo? Well, they begin to prepare for Terri's funeral. But remember, the thing about Michael and the Schindlers is that they haven't spoken for years now. And although they occupy the same space next to her bed, they still can't speak. They won't speak to each other. And they decide that they need to have two separate funerals for Terri. One for Michael and one for the family. An autopsy is done on Terri's body before she is buried, and the findings are really interesting. The autopsy discovers that Terri had been blind since the day of her heart attack. From the very moment that she arrived at the hospital, her sight was gone. And it makes for really interesting viewing if you re-watch those clips of her supposedly following the balloon with her eyes and her being responsive to the light and to her mum and all that stuff. In fact, she was blind and nobody knew that. Her brain had, in the 13 years that she was in that bed, reduced down to about 20% of what a human brain would normally look like. Again, this is what doctors said. Doctors said this is what was happening with her brain, but they weren't listened to. A side note, but I think a nice one, an important one, on the part of the autopsy form where it asks how the dead person's body is in general, it noted that the care given to her has been exceptional and that her body in no way shows the signs of someone who has lived in a bed for 13 years. Michael, a year after Terri's death, marries Jodie, and he gets the ring that he originally married Terri with, and he gets it made into this sort of like 2-ring design. So there's like the wedding ring that he married Terri with and the wedding ring that he's giving to Jodie, and he gets them combined, and that's the wedding ring that she wears. And it's a sign from Michael that he will always be in some way married to Terri. The Schindlers continue after her death to campaign for the rights of people in vegetative states, still claiming that Terri was murdered. After 13 years, 30 court cases, the Pope, the President, and millions of Americans have been involved, finally Terri is laid to rest. The 2 separate funerals happen, and they are both attended by thousands of people. Michael Schiavo gets to choose and write the headstone for Terri, and it reads: Teresa Marie Schiavo, beloved wife, born December 1963, departed this earth 1990, at peace 2005. And it has 4 words written by Michael at the bottom of the gravestone, and it says, I kept my promise. And so ends the Terri Schiavo story. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you would like to do any research on Terri Schiavo, you will find about 1 billion different things online. millions you will find. There's lots of sites. You'll find like the official sites that the family have created. There's I think it's called the Life and Hope network that her family set up. You'll also find, there's millions on YouTube, or there's just stuff everywhere. Interestingly, there was a and I didn't mention it earlier, but I'll mention it now. There's a really, oh God, and it's one of these things. It depends on what your sense of humour is, right? I don't know if you know the program. Well, you will know the program. What I'm talking about. You'll know the program Family Guy, right? So Family Guy will often, go to some very, very, very dark places, but there is an episode in which they open the episode with a musical theatre version of the Terri Schiavo story, and it's supposed to be like kids telling the Terri Schiavo story, and it's all like musical theatre, and it's just really bad jokes about like she's a vegetable, oh I hate vegetables, all that kind of stuff. And it contains a line where there's like musical theatre voices singing Terri Schiavo is kind of alive, oh, and all this like really bad stuff. But I remember watching that like years ago, but I didn't even really know the Terri Schiavo story at the time. I just remember watching it and being like, oh, what? Even though I don't know that story, I know that that's rough, whatever they've done there. But interestingly, do you know, the family have actually included this clip on all of the Terri Schiavo websites. On their own actual websites, they have this Family Guy clip, which I think is really interesting. I don't know if it's like a way of going, well, actually, yeah, popular culture still will reference it, or I don't know. I don't know what that is. But anyway, the reason I'm mentioning that is if you type in Terri Schiavo, it's one of the things that you might come across. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this story, and yeah, that's really about it from me, except to say, join the Facebook group. It's marvellous. Get in touch. Let me know your thoughts. And yeah. Okay. Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.